Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, good to see you. Thank you for being here. You're leading the FBI at a very critical time for that agency and also a critical time for our country. And I want to start by talking to you about the tide of violence that we have seen, ideological violence against people of faith, particularly Christians. You just think here, take a rough catalog. Just in the last couple of years, we've seen shooting at the Covenant School, Christian school in Nashville. We've seen school shooting at the Annunciation School. We've seen church shootings multiply. We've seen acts of crime and violence, vandalism, arson against churches and parishes all across the country. And then, of course, last week, Charlie Kirk, who said, "I want to be remembered for my courage, for my faith," was shot on a college campus. Let me just start with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Is the FBI, and I appreciate the tremendous work the FBI has done in this investigation, is the FBI investigating the Kirk assassination as part of this broader pattern of anti-religious, anti-Christian violence?
We are investigating Charlie's assassination fully and completely and running out every lead related to any allegation of broader violence, and we're producing results on that we'll disclose when appropriate.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Let me just ask you a few questions about that if I could.
Sure.
Reports have suggested that the FBI is investigating a broader network of groups that may have had some knowledge of the shooter's plans. Can you give us any details on that, following up what you already said in public? How's the FBI working to find other potential accomplices, folks who may have known about the shooter's plans, folks who may have encouraged him? Any update on any of that?
So in terms of what we do for an interrogation perspective, we go and reach out to the family and community immediately. And we've conducted those investigations and interrogations with local law enforcement, and we're continuing to do that because those closest to the suspect are going to hopefully know the most about the suspect and his beliefs and his ideology. On top of that, unfortunately, it has been leaked that there was a Discord chat, and for those unfamiliar with it, it's a gaming chat room online that the suspect participated in. So what we're doing, we've already done, is serve legal process, not just on Discord, so that the information we gathered is sustained and held in a evidentiary posture that we could use in prosecution should it be decided to do so. And we're also going to be investigating anyone and everyone involved in that Discord chat.
Okay, very good. I see the public reports that the Discord thread had as many as 20 additional users. It sounds like you're trying to run down all of that to see if that's accurate, who else may have been on that thread, what they may have known. Is that fair to say?
It's a lot more than that, and we're running them all down.
It's a lot more than 20?
Yes, sir.
And you're running all of that to ground?
Every single one.
Yeah, fantastic. Let me just turn to the broader question here of anti-religious, anti-Christian violence. Let me just give you a few stats that I'm sure that you're all too familiar with. Every person of faith in America certainly is. Major report this past year found that there have been over 400 instances of hostility against churches in the United States in the year 2024. Those included arsons, bomb threats, shootings, and firearm incidents. Another organizational report found that there were 500 attacks on Catholic parishes alone. So that number, 415, that's all Christian churches in 2024. Another organization found 500 separate attacks on just Catholic parishes since May of 2020. Of course, we have the Covenant school shooting, the Annunciation school shooting in Minnesota, where 2 children were shot dead as they were praying in a pew. Here's my question. What is the FBI doing to take on this rising tide of violence that seems to be motivated by anti-religious hatred?
Specifically, sir, we have 60 anti-Catholic hate crime incidences reported to us that are being investigated. Publicly, I can tell you we have 5 hate crime investigations with anti-Catholic bias ongoing currently in the states, in the cities of Kansas City, Louisville, Houston, Nashville, and Richmond. That's what I can say publicly. But any ideologically based attack against any faith, as a man of faith myself, will not be tolerated, and the full resources of the FBI are committed to all of it.
Are you investigating any domestic cells that instigate or encourage or fund or in any way support attacks on churches or other houses of worship?
Senator, you raise an incredibly important point that most people don't look at. I've always said we follow the money, and whether it's terrorism or attacks based on ideology or attacks on institutions of faith or people of faith, someone's paying for it, and we are reverse tracing those steps. We are not stopping at the perpetrator themselves. We are reverse engineering to hold those accountable in our investigations to who funded them and knowingly funded them, and we will bring the appropriate steps against them with our partners at DOJ.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. We look forward to hearing reports on that progress. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Let me just ask you this in the same vein, Director. Since the Dobbs decision, the FBI has advertised $25,000 rewards for information on attacks on abortion clinics. Will the FBI similarly offer rewards for information on attacks of houses of worship?
Yes, when it is appropriate, the rewards are any reward, whether it's an attack on a house of faith or on a homicide or whatever, is determined by a group within the FBI, but we will work with them to make sure that rewards of monetary value are put out for all ideologically based attacks.
Good. You just rattled off some statistics, which I was glad to hear about the number of investigations you have open, the incidents you're tracking against Christians, against houses of worship. Let me just ask you if you consider designating a senior official as a liaison to houses of worship, to Christian other religious organizations, to publish metrics on investigations and arrests related to church attacks, church threats, vandalism, arson, etc. Will you set up a system for liaising and then reporting so that everybody can see, this committee and the public can see just how many attacks we're talking about, just what the level of threat and violence is and what the FBI is doing to combat it?
Senator, you're speaking my language. The private-public sector partnership on this specific issue, just like the other ones we've talked about, is equally transformative to finding those involved in these criminal activities. And with your assistance, I would ask you if you're able to identify someone who's an expert in that area, we will work with them. We will take their information because as great as the FBI is, we're only as good as the information we can get, and we don't have the reach that the private sector does in some of these areas.
Very good. Happy to help on that. Let me ask you about something specific to the FBI, because sadly, as you know, the FBI, when it comes to anti-religious animus, has been part of the problem before you got to this agency. And I know that you remember the infamous memo generated by the FBI that attempted to recruit informants in houses of worship, in particular in Catholic parishes. Your predecessor testified when this information, I just want to reiterate, this memo became public because of a whistleblower. It was not turned over to this committee. It was not disclosed to this committee. In fact, we were told it didn't exist, and then a whistleblower published it, showing that indeed the FBI had recruited informants, attempted to, into Catholic parishes. Your predecessor then testified, sitting right where you are today, he testified that this, I'm going to quote, was a single product by a single field office, end quote. That was a lie. Because we then had additional whistleblowers come forward and say, no, actually, multiple field offices contributed to the drafting of the report. And indeed, there was a second anti-Catholic memo that the FBI generated. And indeed, those memos were distributed to over 1,000 FBI agents across the country. You know all of this. You and I talked about it when you were here for your confirmation hearing back in January. I just want to follow up and see, have you been able to determine how this memo got written and distributed? How is it that the Federal Bureau of Investigation came to be recruiting informants in Christian churches in this country?
Senator, we did dig in, and we are doing our investigation simultaneously with Congress. And just to put it in perspective, we've provided 700 documents on the Richmond Catholic memo specifically to this committee, whereas my predecessor provided 19 pages. And not only that, but we looked into how the source recruitment structure at the FBI was conducted during this time. And we made adjustments and permanent fixes to ensure that sources are not put into houses of worship unless there is an actual ongoing criminal or international terrorism threat. We will not use sources at this FBI to investigate and cull information just for the sake of culling information in houses of worship.
Has anybody been fired for this?
There have been terminations related to this and resignations.
Good. There need to be, because if this is going to be standard at the FBI, nobody can trust the FBI. You want to talk about violating the First Amendment? This has got First Amendment violation written all over it. It's one of the most revolting chapters in the FBI's history. And considering what we're seeing more broadly in terms of the acts of violence against people of faith, This has absolutely got to end, and the FBI has to lead the way. So I count on you to do that, Director. Let me just, in the minute or so that I have remaining, let me just shift gears and ask you about something else you said earlier. You said that protecting our youth is maybe the FBI's top priority. It's great to hear. Let me ask you about the role of AI chatbots in that, which you've talked about a little bit already today. Are you investigating any cases of AI-generated child sex abuse material? You issued a PSA earlier this year warning that synthetic child sex abuse material, it's where the AI generates it using maybe a real kid's image, but then generates sex material, sex abuse material. You warned that that was illegal under federal law. Is the FBI investigating any instances of this synthetic CSAM material generated by AI that you could speak to?
We are investigating dozens of those matters because let me just say this. As far as the FBI is concerned, generative AI that produces CSAM, child sexual abuse material, under our investigative authorities is treated as equally as if it were actual child sexual abuse material. There's no difference for me and the FBI on this.
Let me just ask you one other thing in this vein. I'm sure you've seen the reporting that Meta's AI rules, their own internal guidelines, allowed their chatbots to have sensual, that's their word, sensual conversations with children. We've had instances, multiple instances of children, minors, taking their own lives at the behest of chatbots that instructed them with specificity on how to do it. What's the FBI's role here in investigating what is going on with these chatbots, with these AI companies encouraging? I mean, listen, if an actual person did that, we would say that's grooming. We would say that's child abuse. These companies are doing it. Their own guidelines allow it. What can we do about that?
You're referring to NVE, nihilistic violent extremism, and the 764. It has been made a priority of the FBI because they are targeting children, and these chatbots and these generative AI are getting coupled with actual humans who are using them and releasing them because they can do the work faster and quicker than humans can and get into spaces like social media where humans have a difficulty in engaging. And what we're doing is treating any extension of generative AI as the criminal themselves. And we have, I think, I've got to get the number back to you, but over 1,000 investigations related to NVE. We've had numerous takedowns and arrests of 764 individuals. And we are educating, this may be the most important part, I'm directly engaging with the social media and media companies, the internet service providers, to find a way to shut down. There's nothing I can do at the FBI to force them to shut it down, but work with you in Congress to find a way to work with our partners to get that shut down permanently.
Thank you.
Senator Cool.